This week, myself, John Strand, and Matt Alderman will be discussing enterprise news. Bitdefender offers a new managed threat monitoring service. Symantec and Fortinet partner to deliver robust and comprehensive cloud security services. Untangle has partnered with Malwarebytes, and maybe that might actually be it for the news, slow news week as we round out the year. The next segment, we'll talk about the top 10, my top 10 list for 2018, and the other hosts' perspectives on top vulnerabilities, favorite new startups, favorite new attack techniques, and more. So stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your security operations with DF Labs security orchestration, automation, and response technology. Automate threat containment, orchestrate incident response, and measure operational performance with DF Labs in-command SOAR platform. Leverage your current security resources to minimize incident resolution time, maximize analyst efficiency, increase the number of incidents handled, and reduce overall risk. In-command SOAR acts as a force multiplier, enabling your security team to do more with less. Streamline the full incident response lifecycle automation process today. Keep your cybersecurity incidents under control with DF Labs. Visit dflabs.com/security weekly and request to see in-command SOAR live in action. Stop attackers from domain credential theft and lateral movement with a 99% success rate by using artificial intelligence to control the attacker's perception of the environment. Javelin Networks is the world's first endpoint intrusion containment platform to protect domain networks. Javelin detects targeted attacks and breaches by obfuscating Active Directory, domain controllers, domain identities, domain credentials, and all domain resources. It only takes one compromised machine to jeopardize the entire organization. Don't be a victim. Visit javelin-networks.com and request a demo of AD Protect today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer's sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome to episode 120 of Enterprise Security Weekly for December 19th, 2018. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined in studio by Mr. Matt Alderman, sitting to my right. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Always fun to be here.
Nice to have you here in studio. We're making things happen.
We are.
It's exciting times.
Well, we finished BSW on Monday.
Yep.
This is the last for ESW, and we get Paul's Security Weekly tomorrow night.
Right.
That one's going to be lots of fun.
Several hosts will be in studio. On the lines remotely, Mr. John Strand, who's been very busy lately, of course, but probably very much looking forward to the holiday break. Do you get a break in the holidays, John?
Yeah, I have this, and then I have one more meeting, and then that's it. I'm done.
Good.
I'm not
Good.
doing a goddamn thing. Well, that's not true. I'm studying for my CISSP, so I get to do that over Christmas holidays.
Excellent. I get to build some software over
Sounds
Christmas
like fun.
break.
Yeah, I get to work on HR policies and a bunch of business operations.
Time
stuff.
off just means we might not have meetings scheduled with people. So, right. Awesome. A quick announcement. The RSA Conference 2019 is, of course, the place to be for the latest in cybersecurity data, innovation, and thought leadership. March 4th through the 8th in San Francisco. We'll come alive with cybersecurity's brightest minds as we gather to discuss the industry's newest developments. You can go to rsaconference.com/securityweekly-US19. Use the discount code 5U9SWFD. I think that, if I get this right, 5 Utah 9 Sierra Whiskey Foxtrot Delta.
Very good.
Is it Utah? Is it you a Utah?
You just screw up on that, and you just call down a fire team somewhere.
That's right.
So be careful.
All right. That gets you 100% off and a fire team from our U.S. military.
Are you guys both going to be there at RSA?
Yes.
Yes.
Because I will be there as well, so that'll be a good time.
Yeah, I think this year we worked with RSA Conference. We actually have 2 days in the broadcast alley. So Monday and Tuesday, we have 2 days there where we can do interviews and segments, et cetera. So we got 2 days with them. So we're an official media partner this year. We work very closely in getting that taken care of this year.
You can tell Matt handled all that. I just read the announcement on the show.
I think I got accepted for 2 talks, and we will have 2 tables there. So it's going to be a very busy week.
Yes.
Always busy. You're speaking
I have
there too.
one slot, and I'm a backup for one of my other ones. So
we should go hang out in the speaker room and just heckle other speakers again. And we should literally just write our slides 5 minutes before we go on stage.
John is integral to my RSA experience the one time I went. So I'm glad you're going to be there this year. You're like my comfort blanket.
See, you would completely mess me up because I go in the green room and rehearse. So it's guys like you that would just completely throw me off.
Yes, pretty much.
I think Paul and I were doing shots, actually, to be honest. So good times.
Lots of fun.
I do shots after, but never before.
That was a long time ago. Dude, that was what? Is that coming up in like 6 years ago?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, for sure.
Yeah.
So in the news this week, this is new, right? Thoma Bravo to acquire McAfee? Or is it not new? Now
No.
I'm confused.
No, you're confused because the original rumor was Thoma Bravo was going to buy Symantec.
Yeah.
So this is a new rumor. Well, it seems a little more than a rumor because CNBC reported this, where Thoma Bravo is now in conversations to potentially acquire McAfee.
So they gave up on Symantec, and they said we're going to buy McAfee.
That's what it looks like.
Interesting.
Why? I don't see how this is Matt, maybe you can help me out with this. I don't see how this is a tremendous amount of growth for them, or do they look at this as kind of a cash cow that they're trying to purchase?
So it's interesting. Thoma Bravo has been buying a lot of individual security companies. They bought Imperva.
And they're
bought Beyond
private equity?
Trust.
Is that no? What are they?
Yeah, I guess.
What would you call them?
I guess they're a private equity firm. The best way to describe them.
Private equity.
But they've been buying up a bunch of properties, right?
Now, they leave them alone to do their own thing?
Well, they have so far. But the question is, what's the strategy now?
Yeah.
Right? Are they trying to, because they have Logarithm, Imperva, Beyond Trust. Now they're looking to bring on either a Symantec or a McAfee into the equation. So I guess here's the question, right? Are they looking to combine some companies and roll them back out? Are they going to leave them alone? You know, they went through this process with Tripwire, which was interesting, a few years back, where they bought Tripwire, and then they ended up selling it out to Belden, and they brought in some, you know, they've kind of rebranded around industrial controls and trying to leverage some of that.
That was a mistake, I think.
For Tripwire, I agree.
Yeah,
John.
I think it kind of lost their core, their base. But so what's the plan? When the original announcement came out, the rumor around Symantec, we're like, okay, you bring some endpoint in with that portfolio. Do you kind of create a bigger entity and roll it out?
Right.
It sounds like that wasn't very successful. So now they're looking at McAfee. Well, look, McAfee's gone through a bunch of interesting transitions over the past couple years, right? They were Intel, then rolled out of Intel. They've divested things like McAfee Vulnerability Manager. So where does this fit? I don't know.
Sometimes when I see these companies doing this, I just have this feeling that there's someone very high up in the company that's like, security, we need to be in the security play. Go buy me security stuff. And they all scramble to go buy as many security companies as they can without really understanding the space at all. And I'm not saying that this is a bad buy. It would make sense if you're trying to find like a foundational bedrock cash cow type company that you can use to fuel additional purchases and additional research and development. But I don't see a lot of firms making that play. Usually they want to buy, they want to combine, they want to sell, they want to do something big with it rather than just, making good money off of it moving forward into the future. Yeah,
I mean, McAfee does have a really solid endpoint product. ePolicy Orchestrator has been kind of the glue that held all those pieces together. But now you start to overlap. You've got Nitro with McAfee now overlapping with Logarithm. That doesn't, to me, make a lot of sense, right?
You're going to be cannibalizing.
Yeah, a little bit of Logarithm. You've got McAfee bought Sky High, so they got a CASB built in there. They've got the Imperva acquisition with the WAF. There are pieces that could be combined into one, but I don't know what the long-range plan here is with this, but it's interesting. I think it's probably good for Intel and TPG to resolve the mistake of buying McAfee in the first place.
Yeah, it's interesting how companies spin in and out, and I think CA is on a similar strategy. Well, I mean, until they themselves got bought, but they spun Veracode out.
Veracode back out.
Right.
Yeah, so Veracode, Broadcom buys CA, then CA, who had just bought Veracode, a year and a half, 2 years ago, spins it back out, which is, to me, really just befuddles me because CA was actually building a decent security portfolio around app and identity and stuff, and then you take one of the core components and spin it back out?
The Broadcom acquisition changed that.
I think so. Well, just changed strategy.
And, it's kind of tying it back, though, what does this actually mean for enterprises? And I would say if you're already running McAfee, don't worry about it. Like there's going to be no foreseeable change that's going to happen over the next 6 to 8 to 10 months. This is going to be a slow move. So if you're an enterprise organization trying to figure out what to make of this, just don't worry about it. It shouldn't impact you one way or the other.
It could be a benefit for existing McAfee customers, right? If they do really try to leverage other Thoma Bravo investments and bring them together, it could give McAfee a broader play overall. So it could be good for McAfee customers. I think time will tell kind of what the plan here is. Because that's a hard one for me to figure out.
Yep.
Bitdefender is offering a new managed threat monitoring service. What's interesting, I think Bitdefender is interesting. While they do play in the endpoint detection and response market, they also have their other product is like virtualization hypervisor security, which is way cooler. Like that's a really cool, innovative space.
But I'm not seeing
solution.
It yet. That's what I wonder. Like there's a lot of cool things we see that just aren't implemented. This could be one of them.
Agree.
Well, because I think part of it is VMware's done a lot themselves with NSX and other things in the virtualized space. So have they just locked everybody out of virtual machine security because now you bundle it all with VMware, with NSX and the things that VMware has done over the years? Or is it, as we move away from virtual machines into containerized workloads, is that shift also creating some friction and some challenges for the traditional guys that were just focused on VM security? I don't know.
See, I think it was first what you were talking about. VMware kind of locked everyone out. Now, when we're moving forward into the future, I see a lot of organizations that are far more interested in container security than they are virtualization security. If anything, if they're running a lot of virtualization, they want to move to the cloud as quickly as they possibly can, rather than continue to put additional security technologies on something that they know is going to be phased out in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, so it's a data center security play for Bitdefender. We did a briefing with them. So it's a software-defined data center, hyper-converged infrastructure, and basically data cloud security for MSPs. So it's playing in that cloud and virtualization space,
right?
Creating
kind of that hybrid, straddle the cloud and the data center, and
Well, and it's kind of the same type of thing that we were talking about a little bit later with Untangle and Malwarebytes as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen Untangle in the news in a long time. Apparently, they've built up a full-fledged company. When I think of Untangle, I think of the company that makes free open source firewalls, like basically competing with some of the other distributions that have a free firewall. Why is it escaping me at the moment? The BSD based one. What is the one I use? I use OpenSense is the open source derivative, and then what's the commercial one, John? That we've had them on the show.
BSD based.
Yeah, anyway, the other firewall company. People are yelling it at me as I speak. But anyway, the other firewall company, they got more commercialized, but got their start in the open source firewall components. And Untangle was also in that space. And now it looks like they've really commercialized their product line. Like I used to think of Untangle as really just a free firewall.
Yeah, it looks like they've built a commercial product to kind of manage all those firewalls. And so instead of just a standalone, they've created this command center to manage multiples. And
yeah, here it is right here, the next generation firewall. Yeah, you can use it for free. And this was one that people were building their own and using them in their homes and having all that extra functionality built into their firewall for, spam prevention, ad blocking, content filtering, all that kind of thing.
So then what Malwarebytes brings to that is the endpoint component now tied with the perimeter firewall component, which you've seen a lot of moves in that space and different partnerships, and even the firewall companies moving more into the endpoint side. You know, Palo Alto's done that with what they call it, trips or whatever. It's you're now seeing the firewall vendors also bringing in some of the endpoint components and bringing all that together in a kind of a single solution.
It's one of those plays that's been around for as long as I can remember. If you give away personal home versions of something, and whenever people are looking to move to the enterprise, if they're comfortable with it and they liked it in their home use, they're going to naturally kind of gravitate towards that in like a small to medium sized business as well.
Yeah, because I don't think a lot of people would do that in the enterprise, but SMB would make sense if they were comfortable with it and used to using it. They would also use it in that environment. But as you move up into the larger enterprises, I just don't see a lot of those home solutions really scaling to manage those environments.
But if you think about how many of the technologies that we talk about, how many of the companies that we talk about, do they actually have a play for SMBs? It seems like SMBs are way far behind in security from your Fortune 100 companies.
Sorry, it was pfSense also had a similar business plan to Untangle, right? Free firewall, now commercialized firewalling. And again, it goes back to what John was saying too about you've got that open source component and the commercial component. How do you balance the two? But
you're right, John. The SMB use case is different. Primarily for a number of reasons. One, I think it's the skill sets, because it's mostly IT folks trying to manage security in the SMBs. So ease of use and in not having all these enterprise features may not be the same thing. It's more about operational efficiency and making it easy, because it's usually the IT guy who also has a security hat. So those solutions look a little different in the SMBs than they do in the large enterprise.
Yeah. We did have Symantec in the news as well, partnering with Fortinet to provide cloud security services, which is kind of interesting. And I don't think people think of Symantec as a cloud security, but they bought
Blue Coat.
Blue Coat. And that's their kind of almost not CASB, but SaaS and cloud.
Yeah.
What do you call that space with Netscope and?
Well, they call it now Web Security Service.
Yep.
So Blue Coat had aspects of some CDN capabilities, some web app firewalls, and some other things. This has been a move for Symantec for years. I mean, when we were back at Tenable talking to Symantec on some OEM stuff, their vision was, look, we have to build cloud-based services. They saw it. It was a struggle for them, I think, to do it themselves. The Blue Coat acquisition definitely gave them some cloud DNA into Symantec.
Right.
And you've been seeing them do more things on the cloud side. This is kind of this is a partnership announcement. It's not doing it natively themselves, but they are definitely getting requests from their customers to give more cloud capabilities. You bring two big companies like this together, a lot of joint customers, a more integrated solution. It's not a bad thing, but Symantec could also, do some things themselves natively or through acquisition if they wanted to instead of partnership. So this component of what Fortinet's bringing to the table must not be strategic for Symantec, and therefore partnership makes sense in this case.
But it seems like it should be strategic for Symantec, like not just the partnership. Like it looks to me like Symantec should be playing in this space. Like they shouldn't just be partnering. Do you know what I mean? Or is this just a stopgap?
It's a good question, but you're right? Traditional endpoint, bring in Blue Coat. Blue Coat had some I think they had some firewalling capability in it. So
Symantec here bought Surf Easy virtual private network browser for security applications, which I think helped them in that play in that space of basically how do you unify all of your access to all of your cloud services, regardless of where people are. Right, that's one of the problems that Netscope is solving. So.
And one of the things I keep trying to come back to is if I was a CISO, if I was on the ground from an IT perspective, what the hell does this mean to me? If I'm running Fortinet, if I'm running Symantec, what does this mean at the end of the day? Does this actually make my job easier? And I honestly don't know what this does for organizations.
Only if it's a tighter integration between the two and you can start to centralize some of that data and more of a common interface, then yes, it makes it easier. If it doesn't do that, then I don't know that it really helps.
Any other news? There's been some security funding. One I want to ask you about. Zero Trust Network Security and Continuous Compliance for Kubernetes Platforms. Tigera?
Tigera, I think.
Tigera. Tigera.
Yes.
Tigera. Are you familiar with them coming from this space?
Yeah, I'm familiar with them coming from the container side. They were at DockerCon. Again, I think everybody in the container security space is trying to figure out what's going to survive, what's needed, what's not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of open questions, I think, in the container security side based on what is Red Hat going to do, what is Docker going to do, what native capabilities are going to come into those platforms, what's going to happen with some of the other container security companies after the Layered Insight acquisition by Qualys. So I think everybody's still trying to figure out, where solutions are needed.
It's interesting that Kubernetes made, of course, the vulnerability public around the same time that Tigera was getting funding. So I think that was probably really good for them.
Probably really helped them
quite a bit. I don't know if it came before or after or whatever, but they probably had already finalized the deal once that
and then you
announced.
have some companies that are going after just the Kubernetes piece or the infrastructure that's running Kubernetes. So there's a lot of different solutions in that space that everybody's still trying to figure out who's doing what and how do they provide value. I think at the end of the day is the biggest challenge for these guys is what's that additional value these solutions are bringing into that environment.
Well, and I still feel like this whole entire container space is moving so fast that we don't actually know what the vulnerabilities look like. And I feel like there's a bunch of products that are coming online with solutions to problems that are not properly defined yet.
I would agree with you in the majority. There's one area we know what the vulnerabilities look like, and that is the base vulnerabilities in the binaries, in the libraries that are being embedded into the container images that are traditional static kind of analysis vulnerabilities that people... That's where Twistlock and Aqua and some of the early guys got started, right?
That's the easy part.
That's the easy part. Right? The hard part is really understanding what does a vulnerability mean at runtime. And the runtime side, I agree with you, John. It's still not highly defined. What is a vulnerability? What's not a vulnerability? How is that going to mature and emerge over time? Those questions are still... a little unknown.
The architecture vulnerabilities in the new DevOps process, right, and how you're deploying software and building and running software in production, that's the one that I think we're going to see a lot of new activity on. We've started to see it already, and we're just, if you've ever built some of this architecture as a traditional security person, you're like, well, that's could be a problem. Like, how do I protect? How do I isolate? How do I monitor? We have all of those issues. I really think also that security people are going to become a lot more involved and work more closely with DevOps. But I think security is.
We hope so.
Right now, I think DevOps is basically leading the charge with acquiring these technologies because security is behind. I think once it catches up, you're going to see security leading the charge.
Yeah, I hope so. I truly do.
We need that knowledge and experience and that mindset of security to be applied to this process.
Well, and one of the things I think that these products provide, which is something I don't think that they provide, but is the concept of visibility. Actually taking these components of these various DevOps technologies and putting it into a security framework so that we can actually start looking into it. And it's kind of like the old CIS guides, right? It's like the old NSA SNAC guides. Many people in computer security didn't understand operating security at all until there was a guide and a framework to start looking at it. And if these products do nothing but start abstracting these things in a way that a security person can understand it and start understanding, end-to-end communications, how does the data flow? What are the APIs? How are they being used? So we can start getting visibility into it. Then eventually, I think you will start seeing security lead that charge. But until that point, many of us just don't even know what the hell this is.
Yeah, it's so complex when you think about the different layers that are in the container environment. The infrastructure, it could be dedicated hardware, or it could be a platform. You've got Kubernetes and the different orchestrators. You've got the container workload sitting on there. It's so much more complex than the old days where it was, okay, my database is running on that server, so I lock down the server, I lock down my database communications, check, right? And then I go to my app server. completely different.
But from a security perspective, we've made a lot of progress in providing the capability. I think we just still need to work more closely with developers, because now we actually have tools and processes that can tie security in from the very beginning stages of development, throughout development, through testing, through deployment, and ultimately running in production. And like Matt said, there are so many pieces underneath all of those different phases.
But I would say less than 5% of the organizations that are out there are actually utilizing that and developing that type of security lifecycle all the way from the beginning all the way through.
I agree, John.
And
Adoption as well.
I base that on IONS calls, where I have people in IONS calling me up. They're like, so we were thinking about implementing security in our SDLC. What do you think? I'm like, this conversation should have been had 8 years ago. And in the same breath, where they're just starting to talk about it, they're like, and what's this Docker thing? Our developers are starting to use this all over the place. Is that bad or is that good? And I'm like, oh my God. And if you don't know what you're doing, that complexity explodes exponentially, and it actually makes your problem infinitely worse if you don't try to get that security lifecycle baked in at the very beginning, rather than just implementing new containerized technologies right on top.
Correct.
It's not even just the beginning, all the phases.
All the phases.
All the phases.
But I think the thing that security vendors have to realize is that the data, that visibility, as great as it is, has to be integrated back into the developers and their tools and give them visibility, because they're the ones going to have to fix it in some form or fashion, right? At different stages. And what we don't see happening enough, and I see it in a few cases, and it's only the really mature folks that have been doing this for a long time, really start to understand what are those right tools, how do they fit into the process, how are we providing that feedback to the developers to improve. But we have to get away from this mentality of, I have a security tool, therefore you come to my tool, you log in, I'll show you everything that's wrong. It's like, no, developers aren't going to log in there, right? You have to integrate it back in. Otherwise, it's not going to get used.
Well, and I'm also going to make a recommendation just based on our tests and what we've seen. Find a platform and commit to a damn platform. Organizations that choose Azure and they go top to bottom Azure, and then they can tie into Azure Security Center, right? Whatever they have. Tend to be more secure than organizations that say, well, we've got this in AWS, we've got this over in Google Cloud, we've got this over in Azure, and then we got a couple of services that are running in IBM Cloud. And those organizations are absolute complete train wrecks. So if you're just getting started with this, try to find a platform and try to stick to it as much as you possibly can and work within that ecosystem. It's kind of like the organizations, Paul, if we use, our old people perspectives from 10 years ago, organizations for a long time thought that they had to run as many different technologies as possible. They'd run Linux, they'd run Windows, they'd run BSD, because they were a diverse ecosystem, and that was garbage. Organizations that picked the technology profile, like they said, we're going to be a Windows shop, tip to tail, and we're going to develop deep skills, they tended to be more secure because they were able to develop the skill sets, and those skill sets were transferable from security to help desk to dev to operations. That same recommendation is going to apply today whenever you're moving things to the
cloud. Keith on Application Security Weekly says the same thing about all the development processes. Pick one code repository system. Pick one ticketing system. Pick one continuous integration and development like Jenkins or whatever it is, and tools like that. Like
pick an orchestrator, right?
Yes,
a lot of people started with Docker, Swarm, and then Kubernetes, and maybe Mesos, and this, that. As those parts continue to move around, it's so hard to get security wrapped around that, because the platforms, the technologies are changing.
Matt, I think you uncovered one really good reason why we haven't seen more of the security integrated into this process. It's because developers are testing out all these new things all the time. So as security, we can't come in and help them design something that will result in more resilient software, because they're like, oh yeah, we did this in AWS, but by the way, now this new project we're using Azure. So it's like completely, now you've got a completely different.
Or I was Swarm, and now I'm Kubernetes, and I was,
And it's great that you brought that up. For a while, I was getting a lot of calls and people talking about innovation centers. And the idea of an innovation center for corporations is there needs to be a place for developers to run free and run wild, where they can do anything that they want. They can stand up technologies, destroy technologies, to innovate, because that innovation is so key. And, kind of doing DevOps and that maintenance is completely anathema to any innovation at all. Well, many of the calls that I had, their main requirement was, we want to be able able to stand up this environment. We can do whatever the hell we want, and we don't want security to get in the way. And that is just an absolute recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yes, it is.
All right, with that, let's take a short break, come back, talk about my top 10 list for 2018. Mostly deals with security. Imagine that. Stay tuned.